Hey everybody. So one of the things that is something that I don't know that this may come across in a way that rubs people the wrong way or might kind of strike a chord in some, but I think it's extremely important to talk about, and something that I don't think gets talked about enough outside of some small select circles. And that is what happens when patients identify with their disease process to a point where, they've got it in their Instagram handle, their Twitter handle, they're in, 10 different support groups. And I'm going to preface this by just saying that I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I don't study much into, the field of psychology. So a lot of what I'm going to say here is just kind of based off of discussions I've had with people in the field, along with my own intuitive thoughts on just human nature and, also personal things that have happened with me throughout the years that that shed some light onto this concept of, when you are attached to an identity, that identity becomes important to you, even if it's a negative identity. And so so my personal story, anybody who has been a collegiate level athlete and was really vested in their sport and had that sport taken away from them rather quickly, which is what happened to me with as I was a 400 and a 600 meter sprinter. And then within the course of literally a day, my career ended because of a herniated disc. And during that time period afterwards, not having that identity of that's who I was the 400, 600 meter sprinter. And that's who, that was the story that I told myself on who I was. And it defined a lot of me. And I didn't really realize that until afterwards. It was difficult to not go to practice. It was difficult to go to meets and just watch. And then at one point, it was difficult to not even be really involved in the sport anymore. It took me quite a while to actually kind of just work through that identity aspect. And even right now, I could argue that my identity is centered around owning a medical practice and being a naturopathic physician who does XYZ therapies. And if that was taken away from me, then I know I would struggle with that. And I'm not unique in this. And I'm sure a lot of you watching or listening right now will understand where I'm coming from, because it may have happened to you in the past in some fashion. So where I'm going with all of this is I believe that patients who have that they are a lupus warrior or a sciatica survivor or whatever else they have in their Instagram bio, in their Twitter handle, on their Facebook profile, that's what they talk about with friends. They're in so many support groups. While I believe that support groups can be really beneficial and help people through some rough times, I do think there can be a line that gets crossed that we don't know about at the time, but our identity starts to become attached to whatever disease process we have been diagnosed with, which at the end of the day, the label of a disease is man-made. The term degenerative disc disease is a term created by doctors, aka humans, who decided that was going to be the name for a collection of symptoms and findings. And that label, that attachment, is sometimes extremely beneficial for people because they haven't had answers for decades, and then someone finally tells them, what is going on, and they have something a bit more tangible to hold on to. and to be able to say, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm working on. Whereas unfortunately, there's some who become attached to their disease process because they've had it for so long. And I personally get scared that that those patients may not even know this, and I understand what I'm saying here, but they may not even know this, but a small part of them may be subconsciously self-sabotaging because it's their identity. They don't know who they are without being the XYZ warrior or survivor or anything like that. And that's scary to me. It's scary that, you know, that could happen. I have huge empathy for, you know, people who are going through chronic disease, but I think we just need to start having this conversation more, because I'm sure half of what I just said is not fully correct and needs to be refined. And I think many more discussions need to be had. But I really feel like these are discussions that we need to start having if we want to start helping people to address these chronic conditions that they're dealing with, because that mental aspect is such a huge thing, especially when you know, we as humans may get attention because of that disease process. When we're talking in a group of friends, if someone says, you know, that they have a certain condition, that may bring some attention to that person. And humans have this innate desire to have attention. And so if we get positive reinforcement that, oh, when I tell a patient or someone, when I tell someone that I have X, Y, or Z condition, I get attention, that could be subconsciously ingrained in the mind to a point where we don't realize it's going on, and it just becomes our story. And I think that's scary. And personally, you know, while this isn't my field of expertise by any means, it's something that I come across quite often. And you know, I wish I had better tools as a physician to be able to work with patients and help them through this process, you know, other than trying to help them resolve their disease. But I mean, if the mind is attached to that identity of the disease, I believe that it is harder to heal from that disease. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. And if you're going to, if this struck a chord and you're going to come at me, please understand that this is coming from a place of love and a place of deep caring for humans who are suffering. And it's not a personal attack on anybody. And I just want to start conversations so that we can help patients and people who are suffering with this. All right. See you later.